talk about cloud, one of the first questions they have is about security. And if you don't have a good plan for security when you're talking about cloud, you're probably behind the 8 ball and you're going to have some issues. Sensitivity of information is very critical, and many times we find ourselves facing new questions about how to secure new data that comes into the network. A lot of times we will bring in something that we never thought we were going to have before. So having a balanced approach to security is really important, and it gives you a leg up on how to do this. So we're going to be covering some information and background today about cloud security, cloud in general. We'll be talking a little bit about cloud computing, and then we'll talk about how to integrate that into a balanced approach to security. So there are some important questions to ask yourself about cloud security. And there's 4 of them here that are going to make the difference. We're going to want to be able to answer these by the time we get done with this presentation. So the first question is, how does cloud security integrate into our regular security program? A lot of people think of cloud security differently than they do about regular network security. But when you take into consideration with cloud that some or all of your information is going to be in the cloud, you want to make sure that regardless of where the information resides, you want to have a game plan for being able to handle that. Second question, does cloud security have to match our normal security process? And people that are asking these questions are all, of course, in a good position to make a good decision within their company. So it's going to be a question of, does it need to match? It's kind of like, how does it integrate into a regular security program? Can we show security in the cloud? That's something that's really important to a lot of senior managers, because they don't understand technology at the rate that, like, for example, technicians do. So we're going to be able to answer that question. And one of the latest hot buttons is consumerization, or bring your own device, the acronym BYOD. A good thing or a bad thing with respect to cloud security? Great question. So we're going to be addressing that. Let's start off by talking about what is cloud. Cloud is any system, application, or service that's available to and accessed from the internet. And it's nothing more complicated than that. In fact, when we're talking about cloud, that's what we in IT use a design for when we're talking about the internet. We just draw a little cloud, and that represents the internet. So there's some other areas here where cloud is leading a change in focus away from devices and places. It's becoming people-centric. Security is controlled within applications. Now that's a kind of a dangerous situation. If you don't know the security of the application you're dealing with, you may have some problems. And then, of course, removing the T from IT. So for the purposes today, we're going to be talking about 2 cloud types because they work interchangeably, and a lot of times people get them confused when you're talking about, is something a public cloud or a private cloud. So what we really want to focus on is public clouds can deliver information and interact or receive communication from anyone. Now, sorry about that. That's one of those things that from a security perspective we want to keep in mind, is who's involved in the communication process here, who's interacting with the information. Whereas private is only generally acceptable to specific people. So that's where your traditional security kicks in, is being able to lock the information down, what is private. And again, as I've mentioned before, differences are less about where the information resides and more about the accessibility of that information. Now, of course, the new kid on the block, cloud computing, bringing new concepts into the mix for cloud the way it's been for large companies and smaller companies. The stuff at the top is really important, but the second bullet point replaces complex business infrastructure with simple internal networking and reduced operating costs for IT. Now, the 95% or more of the routine tasks for the IT staff reduction, we want to take a look at that real quick here in this slide. Is if you look on the left-hand side, in the very first column, you'll see backups, installs, reinstalls, miscellaneous, obviously your office upgrades. These are all impacted as normal regular routine tasks that IT has to go through. And we broke those down. Gartner actually did a survey on this, and we came to the same approximate conclusions that backups take about an hour a day for the IT staff. Installs take about an hour a day as well, but there's an end user impact of the same length of time. In fact, for reinstalls and miscellaneous, you see that the impact is actually on both the IT staff and the end user. And in looking at the annual totals, you're dealing with 516 hours of annual downtime for an end user, which is pretty significant. You stretch it over 3 years, and your lost productivity for your end users is over 1,500 hours. Now with cloud computing, because everything is handled on the server in the background, you have much less impact. In fact, your installs are usually only going to impact a very short period of time. In this case, maybe 1 hour a month, because we're doing everything on the servers. And you total that up, and you're dealing with about 12 hours, because there aren't going to be miscellaneous things. There's really not going to be any reinstalls. The backups are all going to be automated, so there's no impact to that. When you deal that up in about 6 hours of Microsoft Office upgrades, you end up with 42 hours across 3 years and no impact to the end user. What a difference and a change there to get things done, right? So there's where your 95% or greater reduction is in that difference right there. Now, when we look at security in IT, our typical approaches are a developer approach and an operational approach. Many times IT will focus on the left-hand side, the problem and issue focus, the single solution scope. They're kind of building, a lot of people build their job into anything that they do. And so there's going to be manual management, very little automation. But one thing that's very good with a developer solution is it's great for short, mid-term solutions. If you don't have something that's going to be long-term as an option here, developer approaches work very well. On the other hand, management likes the operational approach, which is business focus, mission critical scope, high automation, and integrated within what they have. Now, these are long-term solutions, and management likes them. Unfortunately, they often choose to deploy things on a developer time frame with an operational approach, and many times that doesn't work, especially for small companies. So when we're talking about cloud security, we need an approach that blends the best of both of these. So what I've done is I've created a matrix here, just a four block scenario using public and private cloud to be our differentiator for different types, and developer and operational for our approach. When we look at the private developer side of things, this is where you find your custom applications and your databases, your intranet, and these are all traditionally inside of the business. But if you handle things correctly, you can often find yourself with this in the cloud, in a private cloud that will run just as well. And you're not required in a cloud approach to really think about this anyway, other than most of these developer approaches we're going to be talking about are going to have a lot of moving pieces. They're going to have a lot of management involved, a lot of people involved. There's going to be time, and there's going to be a lot of very little automation to this process. Now, when you stay in the developer side of this, the public side now becomes where your regular website is. This is your marketing stack, your website, your blogs, your social media. If you're a large company, you have annual reports that you have to produce. And if you're nonprofit or otherwise, you may have public filings. These also have to be made available to the world. And as you can see, these are a one-way type of thing. This is communication out to the world. And yet it's still a lot of work. Over on the operational side of the public, now we get into our communication stack. Here's where you find your email and your phones and your call center and your hosted line of business applications. Now, a lot of people choose to put line of business applications inside the business. That's no longer required if you're using a hosting service. If you've vetted them very carefully for security, you should be able to run your line of business applications in the cloud. Now, the last quadrant here, the last piece of the matrix, this is where all of the conflict is coming today, and confusion, in fact. When you're dealing with online storage and backups, it's how secure is it? And your cloud computing, you're dealing with your desktops and your servers that are all virtual now. And many of your line of business applications that have traditionally been inside the business can now move into your private cloud, and you're going to be fine. Your productivity suites, and you can be very particular about what business files do go into that private cloud. You may have a situation where you have financial information that cannot be protected adequately in the cloud. You may still be forced to put that into your business. And that's an acceptable choice. I mean, that's part of the idea here in a balanced approach to cloud security, is that some of this information can very easily go into the business. If you plan for it, you're keeping it inside the business, but you're still having your applications and your front end of everything still running in the cloud. That provides you that business discussion to be able to make the choice and make it work well. Now, in order to do this kind of a balanced approach, IT and security must work together, especially with cloud. There's 4 points here, and there's a little bit of discussion about each one that I want to go through. They must adopt a non-centralized approach to information security. You cannot have a centralized approach when everything is spread all over the place. You have to learn how to, like we did, we created like quadrants or zones, and we know that within those zones there are particular profiles that we can utilize, and those profiles will dictate what can go in there and what can't. And you might have to put it into a private cloud instead of having it in a public cloud because it doesn't fit the profile that you're trying to put it in. So by having this non-centralized approach to information security, it gives us the availability to be able to know where things need to go. They have to develop new and better relationships within the business to understand the needs of people. There's a new presentation I'm working on right now on the digital business, which is turning the business something of an inside-out focus, where you're really making your IT work for your customers and your clients, not so much just for your own people. So the ROI on decisions becomes a lot easier when you're making that. And this is one of those ways that you can develop new and better relationships, will give you the availability to go to the people and say, what can we actually expose to the clients without creating a problem? And IT and security may not have any way of knowing that because they don't know the sensitivity of the information. Now, another thing that this is more controversial, embracing bring your own device as a way to support increasing needs for information access. And a lot of people are complaining about bring your own device. But if you really read into it, there's a lot of ways to secure most of the major cloud solutions. Citrix, VMware, Microsoft all have best practice guides to tell you just exactly how to secure your information so that these third-party devices don't actually hold anything on them, and in fact can't really get to the storage, can't really use the storage, have to use it within the cloud environment. And finally, the IT and security must understand that today's firewall is obsolete. Now, when I say that, I mean the firewall role of we're going to stop everybody from coming in except for what we want. We're going to control the access going out. When you have a smartphone and it can connect to the network, and you can put storage on it. And this is the problem with bring your own device, is you have to be very, very careful about how you handle this. You want to make sure that you're securing the network the correct way, because if you've got a device that has both wireless access and also 3G or 4G access, it's gone right around your firewall and has little or nothing to do with your firewall at all. So the firewall is obsolete as it exists today. Now, upcoming next generation firewalls are beginning to address this, but for right now, they don't. So we're going to have to understand this today, that in its current implementation, the firewall is obsolete. We need other network protective mechanisms to help us here. So the takeaway for this, normally this is where I would do a Q&A, but the takeaway for all of this is that cloud is a changing process, and we are securing it as time goes by. Large companies, of course, are doing their end of the bargain, and they're putting a lot of money into securing the same types of cloud solutions that they used to use. They're now securing the new ones, and we as small and medium businesses are able to take advantage of that. And so that's something that we're going to be able to see in the next couple of years, is a major change there. So in revisiting our questions, how does cloud security integrate into our regular security program? The answer is, it is our regular security program. We don't really differentiate cloud from internal or cloud from what we have on our network. They have to work together. And that works up with, does cloud security have to match our normal security process? Well, yes, if it includes cloud, it should. And next question, can we show security in cloud? Well, if we've got profiles for zones that we can address, we're going to have a much better chance of being able to show security in the cloud, because we can show a profile, we can show the zone, the types of devices that can go in it, the types of information that can go in it. We can go to senior management, or senior management can come to IT or technology or the CIO, whomever, and say, how are we securing us? And IT can lay it out and show it very clearly. So is consumerization a good thing or a bad thing with respect to cloud security? Well, as a question, it really doesn't per se matter, as long as we secure the environment that we're working with appropriate for the information. It does create a challenge for us, but it's something that security and IT are both up to the task for. So at this point, we're going to call it the end of this web seminar. I want to thank you for listening. For more information, visit our website at l5consulting.com. You can also email info@l5consulting.com, or at either of the two numbers that are listed here on our slide. Thank you very much, and have a great day.